Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I feel like I have less room to move. Did anybody grow up in what you would consider a very strict household? They don't even use that word strict anymore. Some people grew up in some strict households. And if strict came along with a church household, sometimes other kids would have words for those kind of kids in their families. It would be strict, it would be holy rollers, it would be religious zealots, or whatever you could get labeled that really easy. You still can't today. Sometimes for a lot less even today you can get labeled those things. But there were some strict rules that there used to be. I know there were kids in my school, and again, I'm not making fun of any of these. Like, there's purposes for everything that you do, and everybody has different ideas. But I know several kids who went to a certain church in my hometown, and when there was a school dance, they couldn't go to it because no dances. Dancing was not allowed. Movies. Some kids couldn't go to movies at all. Some people were less strict, so you could only not go to movies on Sunday. You just couldn't do movies on Sunday. And trust me, I knew people. It was a rule. Some people couldn't play cards. Cards were associated with gambling. You go down to like Mexico, different places, and that's still a big one. I've went on mission trips, and they're like, "Don't take cards. You can't take cards." They're very serious about that. But some things. What about no dating until you're 16? No dating until you're 18. No dating until you get out of the house. There's been rules like that. We've all seen the movies where there's a slow dance, and what do they do in the slow dance? Somebody goes in and they're like, "You two separate. No hugging while you're dancing. Can't do that." There's some rules. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I mean, when you become a dad of a girl, some of these things you think of and you're like, "Oh, that doesn't sound so bad to me now," but it's probably a little strict. I've been to a camp before where I was playing music that when it came to swim time at the camp, that there was a separate hour for girls' swim time and there was a separate hour for boys' swim time. You think, I mean, you can see why they would come up with a rule like that, but you have to decide if that's too strict or not. I know there's a school, a college, and I won't say names, down in Florida where there's a separate sidewalk for guys and for gals. I'm not joking, I don't make this stuff up. One of my friends, his girlfriend went to school there, so when he visited, they couldn't walk on the same sidewalk. I don't make it up. And then obviously some people, they grew up in churches, they couldn't listen to the regular radio. Can't listen to that music, it's bad. It's the devil's music. And there's some bad music on there, there's some good. I'm not making fun, I'm just saying there's been some strict rules throughout history. Well, my wife, I don't even think I'm going to get this right, but she said one of the sayings in her youth group was, we don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't chew, and we don't go with boys who do. Well, that was Grandma? That's what your grandma said? She's lightened up a lot. You hear some of the things I hear now. Let it all out. But there's a purpose and a heart to that rule, right? But if you just grow up thinking that, what's going to happen when you get older? I mean, is that in the back of your head when you're 25 years old and you're on a date? Oh, he's one of those. Can't do it. In all seriousness, there are some rules, and there were reasons why people came up with rules, and they may be good or bad or whatever, but what about Sundays? You know, in the last 50 years, things have changed a lot. I know before, if you wanted to travel, and it was a Sunday, when I was growing up, you had to get gas on Saturday because there weren't even gas stations open on Sunday. Forget holidays, just on a Sunday there was no, so you had to go, and if you wanted money from the bank, of course you had to go Saturday before like 11 or noon, because then they closed and you couldn't do it, but nothing was open on Sunday. Now, is that strict? I don't know. But there's purposes behind that rule too. I've visited churches where the whole family comes after church, and they go and they have lunch and they have devotionals together, and there's some good things about it. There's families that do a bunch of fun things on Sunday together, and there's all different ways you can look at this. But Sunday, or what people call the Sabbath, there's been rules about that for a long, long time. Now, there's different ways of doing it, because from my standpoint, now this isn't right or wrong, you can look at it two ways. So what if you raise your kids and you say, okay, on Sunday you can't go to movies, on Sunday you can't do this, you're going to come home, and on Sunday you can't do that, we can't go out to eat, we're going to cook food that we made from scratch, we're going to do all this, and you can't do that, and you can't do that. Or, what if you approach it a different way? And somebody asks your kid, well, what do you guys do on Sunday? I notice, you know what? And I'm like, yeah, well, every Sunday we get together and we do cool, fun stuff with our family. And we usually don't leave the house, but we play these games and we do all these things together. And now, which one of those two things do you think they're going to grow up and have a positive experience with? Being told you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. Or we have this super cool fun thing we do on Sundays where we get together and we don't go out there, we just stay in, and if you want to come over and you're a friend, you can do it with us too. But that's the way we handle Sunday. I have a feeling that the second one might be more effective. Now, I'm not saying all kids are the same. Some kids you need to say, don't do this or don't do that, or they're going to do it in life. And there are other kids that just kind of get the spirit of the rule, right? And the thing, and they get it, and no two kids are the same, no two adults are the same. It's hard, but we have this thing. It brings up, what about the Sabbath? They call it the Sabbath, we call it Sunday, you call it whatever you want. Where does it come from? Where does the Sabbath come from? And how long have we been celebrating this? And what are the different things about it? Of course, it's in the Bible a little bit, but not the same. It doesn't. I opened this up and I read it the other day, and it didn't say anything about not going to movies on Sunday. But in Genesis 2, right at the beginning of your Bible, it's on page 2 of these pew Bibles, Genesis 2. I'm going to read verses 2 and 3. And on the seventh day, God finished the work that he had done. And he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation. Now, when I was studying this, I looked up a whole bunch of different words. Depending on which translation you're doing, it uses different words like he rested, or he stopped, or he completed his work, or whatever. But the main point was that stuff was going on for 6 days, and on the seventh day, nothing was going on. So this is kind of a precedent that's coming on here. That's where it's from, but untangling it's a little bit harder. So rest, ceased, stopped, completed, whatever God did, he was done. And then it says he hallowed it, which I don't use that word every day, so I'm like, what is that word? And so some translations use sanctified, but basically he made it holy. He said, this is a holy day. I'm going to make this day holy, set apart from all the other days. It was the main point. It's different. It's not the same as those. Now, how we see that it's different, now that's up to us to figure out. And he said some of those things. And so the first question I ask is what? What is the Sabbath? What is a Sunday? Now, a lot of people will say that it's about rest and worship. And when you look at stuff, you're supposed to rest. You're supposed to stop from everything else that you've been doing crazy all week and rest. And you're supposed to at least think about God. So, now, do you got to sit on your knees and pray all day and worship? No, you don't have to do that. There's lots of other things you can do. You can go enjoy nature. Can you think about God doing that? Yes. Can you spend time with your family and how God made everybody do that? Yes, of course you can. So when I say rest and worship, it doesn't mean you got to be in church for 8 hours that day. That's not what worship means. You can worship all the time. So what? Rest and worship. Why? Of course, from the example we have in the Bible, it says right there, God did it. He starts. So this isn't necessarily just a religious thing or a Christian thing or whatever, but this God and this Bible, we follow, that's what he did. He rested and he stopped. See, there's a rhythm of work and rest. Because does anybody think it's a good idea to work 14 straight days? No. Some people like to work a lot and then rest hard. You know what I mean? But seems to be the best way that it worked, and this is what they did. And if you read throughout the whole Old Testament, there was a lot of work, and then there was regular rest. And then there was a lot of work, and there was regular rest. Now, of course, back then, there was a lot of work, because if you didn't work 6 days a week, you weren't going to survive. You weren't going to live. If you didn't have crops, you didn't have that. It wasn't just, oh, I need a day off. It was, if I don't work, I'm not going to be fed. So there's a lot more when you read this in here, and when these people looked at it, it was like, I'm going to work 6 days real hard, and then in their minds was, and if I don't work on that seventh day, maybe I won't eat the next day. So there's a little bit of, I'm going to trust God that if I work for these 6 days, that he's going to take care of me on the seventh, and it's all going to work out. And it means a different thing to me. Because whether I work on Sunday or not, or some of you guys, it doesn't mean you're not going to eat the next day. It's just a whole different feeling, but that's what it was for them. Now, some of the other things that you're not looking at, if you read in different parts of the Bible and in Deuteronomy, one of the other reasons you're supposed to rest on the seventh day is rest for everyone. Because they had servants, right, that served them. They needed to rest on Sunday. They had animals that did the plowing and stuff. Animals need to rest too. And so when you think of why you rest on a Sabbath or on a Sunday, you're also thinking of all the people that you can come in contact with and not making them work for you. And that's part of what's going on too. God's saying, everybody can rest. And obviously it helps us, if that's our focus, to get closer to God. And getting closer to God helps us. So it helps us to get closer to God, which in turn helps us. Because I'll argue with anyone on the planet who wants to, when we get closer to God, our life goes better. Now maybe it doesn't happen exactly the way we want it to, or we get the things we want. But if you're closer to God, your life will feel better to you, and it will be better. That's part of what a Sabbath is for. Now, Eugene Peterson is somebody some of you might have heard of, and this isn't, I'm not cussing in church, but he called what we have in Western culture, when we work for a bunch of days and then just don't work on Sunday, he calls that a bastard Sabbath. Because it's not, if you just, in our Western culture, you're go, 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 and then you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do the regular work that I do. But then what do? We do 50 other things on that day, and we run around a bunch of different places. That's not really a Sabbath, it's just a day off. And so calling that a Sabbath, it doesn't really do justice. It's not the same. We're just busy. First of all, there's no rest. Second of all, there's no worship. And if we're going by those categories, you have to rest and worship. Most of our days off don't really qualify. Now, has anybody ever heard of a spiritual discipline? Now, it's a fancy word. Now, I like it. And you talk about what are the spiritual, there's things like meditation and fasting and prayer and all those things.
Basically, they're habits. You do habits or practices, if that works, habits or practices where we follow Jesus. And by doing these things, we follow Jesus, or we try to get close for God. Now, doing spiritual disciplines does not automatically get you closer to God. What it does is it creates space for God to work. Because if you're busy, sometimes you can't hear God. I would say most of the time. You have to sometimes slow down, meditate, pray, and you make space to where you can hear God. That's what a spiritual discipline is. You do a practice so that it puts you in the right mindset, so that you might be able to hear what God has to say to you, or maybe he just wants you to rest and sit down for a little bit. I don't know. But that's what a spiritual discipline is. Now, here's the funny thing with these practices. If Jesus is the goal, did you know that Sabbath, if you call that a spiritual discipline, is the only one out of all spiritual disciplines that's in the Ten Commandments? Think about it. Praying isn't in the Ten Commandments. Bible reading isn't in the Ten Commandments. But Sabbath is. I find that funny. It must have been pretty important if he spells it out in those 10 initial rules that he had. So why? Why is it in there? Well, first of all, it's good for us, right? But if it's so good for us, which I would say it is, to practice the Sabbath, why do you have to command it? Right? Why? It's like commanding us to eat ice cream. Do you have to do that for your child? I command you to eat ice cream now. You probably don't have to do that. That's overkill, right? I think you could get your child to eat ice cream. I think you could get me to eat ice cream without commanding me to eat ice cream. You just pretty much put it in a bowl in front of me, and I'm going to eat it. So why do we have to command it? Well, let me ask you this. Everything that's good for us, do we always do it? Think about a small child. Most of them, do they want to take a nap? Do they want to go to bed when you tell them to go to bed? And we can all agree that them taking a nap or going to bed when we want them to go to bed is good for them and it's good for all of us, right? But will they just do it because it's good for them? No. So we have to tell them when to take a nap. We have to tell them to rest. Because they won't do it. What about you've ever seen your boss says, okay, you've been working hard. Now I'm commanding you, take the rest of the day off, go home and spend time with your family and enjoy it, right? Because we don't want people to burn out. But things that are good for us, we don't always do, even though we should, even though it's good for us, even though it's good for everyone else when we do it. Now I make fun of kids, but do I always go to bed when I should go to bed? Well, of course not. I'll stay up and I'll watch something else, or I'll stay up and do whatever. I stayed up a little too late last night. It's hard. I know in my mind I should do this and I should be well rested, but we just don't do it. But God decided that it's so good for us that he should put it in the commandments, which should tell us a little bit about how important he thinks it is. Now, I'm not talking about the rule part. I'm not talking about you must do this or, like thunder and lightning. I'm talking about he decides that it's good for us, so that it would be a very good thing for us to practice in some way. Now, we all have to decide in what way we practice it, and what's too much, what's holy roller rules, and what's just this is good for you, practices or habits. And that's what we have to decide. And if it's been so good for us, what happened even in the Bible? God did this, and he provided for people, and they stopped practicing it. Why? Well, as I talked about rules at the beginning of this service, what happens? We decide, well, it's good to have a Sabbath and not do this, and we go crazy with our rules. Like somebody in charge or a group of people say, yeah, it's good. Well, sometimes dancing leads to this, so no dancing. Sometimes movies lead to this, so no movies. You get all these rules that aren't even really about the heart of the rule in the first place, right? And that's what kind of happened with the Sabbath. The rule becomes more important than the reason behind the rule. All we know is that we're not allowed to do that. We just can't do that. We don't know why, but we just can't do it. There's a word called sacrosanct, and I had to look it up. And it means too valuable or important to be interfered with. In other words, some rules become sacrosanct. They're like, well, I don't know the reason why we do it, and I don't understand everything, but you just can't do that ever. There's no exceptions to that rule. Just don't ever do anything ever on Sunday. It's pretty harsh, isn't it? Well, that's what started to happen. There was no room for exceptions. And so you see in the Bible, there are actual religious people arguing about about, okay, so my donkey fell in the pit, but it's Sunday. And this rule is so sacrosanct, so important, that there's no way we're not allowed to help that donkey out of the pit, even though it might die, because we might sweat then. Whew, that's called work, and we can't do that on Sunday. Do you see the problem with that? But that's what happens whenever you get, I call it, two more people together deciding rules and reasons for the rules, that a lot of times it goes overboard. It gets to this place where we don't know what's going on, we just know that there's a rule and you have to obey it no matter what. That's what happened with the Sabbath. It got so serious and so strict that they were arguing over a dumb thing like somebody's hurt and you're not allowed to help them because it's Sunday. Now, do you think that complies with the spirit of the rule at all? I don't think so. But that's where they were. So what do you think happened? People gradually walked away from this good practice, from this good habit, from this thing God commanded. They walked away from it because the rules were so strict. They're like, I can't handle it anymore. I am done with this. But if it's a command, and if it's good for us and it's good for others, how do we practice it in a healthy way that doesn't create those situations? So I just got a few pointers today. They're real quick. We did this last week. Number one, schedule it. Regular practice, specific time period. Does it have to be Sunday? Now, I can create some big arguments right now. Does it have to be Sunday? Anybody want to fight? My personal opinion, and from studying it, it's probably best. But no. Why do I think it's the best? Because we can all do it together. If it's all the same day that most of us do it, then it's easier. I mean, what if you're going around, and this happens to me all the time, I want to eat lunch, can't go to that place on Monday, they're closed on Mondays. Oh, that's my day off. I can't eat there. They're doing their day off, whatever. It's probably best. And then everybody can rest because nobody's working for me while I'm resting. And so it makes sense. Was it originally Sunday? If you look real deep, it wasn't. Because the Hebrew seventh day was on Saturday. So we moved it, which is okay, because remember, we're just kind of observing it. We're picking a day, we're doing it, we're deciding to do it together. So it doesn't necessarily have to be Sunday, but it's probably best if we pick the same day. God rested on the seventh day. But let me tell you something. I had to study in there all those words and all the Hebrew words when I looked at it. You want to know a funny thing? When they say God made this, and then it was like a day, and then on the second day he made this. Remember, he made animals and he made people or whatever. The word he uses for day for the first 6 days is a different word. And it means sun up to sundown. And so there's a separation because they talked about the heaven and the skies, and then there was night, and then there was a moon. The first 6 times it's talking about that kind of day. The 7th time, completely different span that has no beginning and no end. It's like the 7th, it's not those 6. Remember we talked about set apart? We have these 6 things that are all like sun up to sundown, we did this. Sun up to sundown, we did this. On the 7th, we just stopped. So when you look at it that way, does it have to be a certain day? I say no, because it's different. And now I want to break this to you, but I work on Sundays. And so we had these things come up when my kids are younger, and they're like, can your kid be on this travel basketball team? We got news for you, though. You're probably going to say no because it's only on Sundays. And I had to decide, well, should I tell my kid they can't do anything on Sunday and I'm working on Sunday? That's a hard one, right? Obviously, I'm like, well, I can't help Sunday morning, but I am working. It's not my Sabbath. Now, I hope that I'm worshiping, hope that I'm not doing the same thing I'm doing the others, but I have to pick a different day. Sorry. I do. Because it's work. Now, it may not, I don't know if you think it's hard work or easy work or whatever it is, but it's work. You're paid to do it. There are people I know that work in churches that they say, okay, when I get done making the video and doing all this, and it's 1:30 p.m. on Sunday, my Sabbath's going to be from 1:30 p.m. on Sunday until 1:30 p.m. on Monday. So you can do that. Mine's not necessarily like that. Different things come up and you have a different job on Monday or whatever. And so all I'm saying is, It's better if you pick a time and you pick a day and you schedule it and you stick to it, because we're all way better when we stick to a schedule and we know that this is going to happen on this day. But I'm not going to stand up here and be a hypocrite and say that it has to be this day and that there's never an exception for that, because there are. I'm just pointing out the benefits to making it a regular time. I'm pointing out the benefits of most people doing it on the same day, but you have to pick your own. Know what it is, but you have to pick it. Number 2, prepare for it. How do you prepare for it? Well, look forward to it, make the most of it, and slow down on the other 6 days. Now, this is what I'm going to say. So, what if I said you observe the Sabbath? Well, you observe Christmas, right? And you observe Easter. Think about those holidays. Are we going to let those be bad days? Not at all. We want to make those the best days of the year, right? Because we observe them. So, I know most people in my house look forward to Christmas. They look forward to their birthday. They get ready for it. For birthdays, we blow up balloons, we write on them. It's a lot of work because we want to make it the best day that it can possibly be. We want to make sure that it's going to be the best day it can be. We want to get the most out of it, so we do all these things to observe it and prepare for it and get ready for it. Imagine if we treated the Sabbath like that. Like, we're going to have this day. God says it's great for us. It's great for those around us. We want them to rest. We want you to learn a little bit more about God. And I'm so looking forward to it that I'm going to get ready for it. I'm going to make sure it's the best day of the week that I can do for myself. And when I say the other 6 days, studies show that if you're going 90 miles per hour for 6 days, that you're going to have a hard time slowing down on the one day that you decide you want to slow down. Maybe your life needs to slow down a little bit leading into that, and that's how you prepare for it. Now, I know there are times when you can't do that. I'm not unrealistic. I know what it's like. I'm just saying that if we observe the Sabbath and if we look forward to it and we try to make the best day it can be, it's probably going to go better. Now, even if you didn't go to church, even if you didn't believe in God, you would have to nod your head if I said it's probably best if at least one day a week you slow down and calm down and focus, right? But it's an example from God and it's holy for me, and so I have the rest and the worship. Observe the Sabbath. Look forward to it. Get ready for it. And the last thing, you're going to like this one, enjoy it. What's the point of it if you don't enjoy it? What's the point of saying, well, it's commanded that we stop working on Sunday. I don't like it because I love to work. I'm going to grit my teeth and I'm not going to work because God tells me I'm not supposed to work. That doesn't sound like a good day. Mark 2:27 says, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. What does that mean? It means this is great news. God doesn't command the Sabbath to take it from us and get this from us. He said it's for us. Is it a good thing to rest? Is it a good thing to get closer to Him? Of course it is. He made the Sabbath for us. That's why when you get these strict rules that just seem so rigid that it totally misses the point. You don't give somebody something that's great and then say, but it's got to be done this way, and this way, and this way, and this way, and you can't even enjoy it anymore. So here's your gift. He didn't do that with the Sabbath either. He didn't do that with Sunday. He said, this is for you. Your life's going to be more vibrant. You're going to be more rested. You're going to be more happy if you take this practice that I give you and you try to make the best out of this practice. That's what he tells us. You know, there's a group of people, you've probably heard of them, called the Seventh-day Adventists. It's a denomination, a Christian denomination, and there's different things that they practice, but one of the main things they practice is keeping the Sabbath holy and taking a day to rest. Like, that's one of the most, that'd be like saying, remember I say, what is our church about? What do we want to be about? Well, their church is about, you do the Sabbath, or you don't come here. That's what they say. Well, studies have shown, and they did this research to find out the happiest people in the world. And you know what one of the groups was? The Seventh-day Adventists. Can you believe it? I mean, since I studied the Sabbath this week, I believe it, but for real. And you know what it also shows, and this is crazy, that they live an average of 10 years longer than everyone else. And so somebody did the math. Say that what do we live now? I don't even know. What's an average lifespan? Is it still 70 or is it like 78 or something? It's probably closer to 80 now. Sorry, I'm not. People live a lot longer, people live a lot shorter. I'm not putting a timestamp on anybody. But they took the average lifespan and they said it's this. And now let's say that there's 52 weeks in a year, and so you should have 52 Sabbaths, right? Add that up. One extra day, 52 years, so about 50. So every year you get 50 more days. Well, when you do the math and you take the average lifespan, trust me, I just did it and now my brain's going. But when you do the math, and if you take a day off 52 times a year and you practice the Sabbath, then with our average lifespan, if you do that for that whole lifespan, it adds up to about 10 years. So that the day that we say we're not allowed to do anything and we're supposed to observe the Sabbath, and we're like, but that's another day I could be getting more stuff done. I just can't take that day off. That's another day I could be doing this. Well, God seems to magically give it back to you at the end of your life. In other words, 10 years of Sabbaths seems to equal 10 years at the end of your life. Now, this doesn't work for every person. It's not a hard and fast rule. I'm not saying it says it in there, every Sabbath you take, I will give it to you back at the end of your life. I'm just saying, the studies have been shown that these people who are serious about the Sabbath, that's what happens. They're happier. They're more fun to be around, probably. I don't know. I don't know any.
Yeah.
And you live longer because you are setting it aside. Now, that's the whole purpose. We don't talk about it much from up here about tithing, about giving to the church. That's God's idea for tithing, too. You take 10% of your money, and then He blesses you more than 10% back in your life. It's not supposed to be, well, you're commanded to do this because you do it for your church, and it's a sacrifice. It's supposed to be, you could say God gave tithing for us, because when we choose to use our money for Him, even just a little bit, He turns it around and gives it back to us. I'll never forget the first day I discovered that as a poor college student, and I decided I'm going to tithe from the top of my check every time 10%. I never could pay all my bills before, and then all of a sudden I could pay my bills. And trust me, the math did not add up. But it's one of those things, and that's what it is with the Sabbath. There's this good thing for us that benefits our life in so many ways. So the Hebrew word for Sabbath is called Shabbat. And it means two things. It means to stop, and it means to delight. If you believe that only God can satisfy us, and I do, that there are things and there is stuff that you can own and have, and they're not bad, but we don't need them to be happy. We just don't need them. So when I say stop working, stop wanting, stop worrying, just stop on Sunday or whatever day you come. And delight. So you delight in what you already have, what you already own, in your own family, in creation, in our lives, and in God. You stop. You delight. That's what the Sabbath means. Stop and enjoy. Stop and delight.
I spin my records on a Sunday before I get myself to church. I put on my best fit, your song got me dancing. I cannot wait to get out the door. We going to the house of the Lord.